What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Kind of Funny Gamescast for Thursday, June 20th, 2024. I'm one of your hosts, Greg Miller, alongside the man, the myth, the legend, Lazlow Jones. Hello, Lazlow.
I don't have smoke machines. That was impressive.
You don't, in your office there, you don't have them to set off in the background? Have somebody run in real quick and vape.
On the show earlier, I can't believe you said the line, "I'm such a hugger," like a grown man saying that out loud.
I am, man. You got to be who you are, Lazlow. You got to be who you are. I'm a hugger. That's what I do. I love it.
I got thrown out of E3 for using that line.
Lazlow, this is a big deal for me. I want you to know. Of course, I met you in passing forever ago. This bum named Simon was walking me around Rockstar HQ, and they introduced us. I said hi, and I didn't at all get to tell you, goddamn, dude, Chatterbox in GTA 3. I'm sure you get it all the time, but like when I brought GTA 3 to my college dorm, the door stayed open and people would just come in and gawk the entire time. And when multiple people would hear Chatterbox, and we would just drive around Liberty City listening to it because it was so freaking good. And on top of that, this is back in the day, so I had a computer that had LimeWire on it, and it just searched. I remember for weeks looking for Chatterbox, and the morning I woke up and it had it, ran across the hall to my friend John's dorm, pounded on it, let him know we had all of Chatterbox. Thank you for Chatterbox.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, that when we were making that, I hadn't actually really seen the game. I'd never had a controller in my hand. I saw it sort of in the distance, but then the day that the game came out, Terry Donovan drove a copy over to my house, and I put it in, and my head exploded because you hear, actually head radio is the first thing that you hear when you get into a car. And yeah, I just sort of drove around scrolling through, listening. Couldn't believe I was actually part of this thing.
And you were a part of it for quite some time. I want to talk about all of that. I want to talk about GTA, Grand Theft Auto. I want to talk about Rockstar. I want to talk about Absurd Ventures, your new thing, the new podcast. There's so much to talk about. But first, I'll remind everybody and get the housekeeping out of the way. This is Kind of Funny Gamescast. Each and every weekday, we talk to you about the biggest topics in video games, whether it be reviews, previews, or just amazing guests. If you like that, you should check it out each and every day live on YouTube, Twitch, and podcast services around the globe. Of course, if you love it to that nth degree, get that Kind of Funny membership on patreon.com/kindoffunny or youtube.com/kindoffunnygames so you could get all of our shows ad-free. You could watch us record our afternoon podcast lives. We record them like yesterday's Daredevil episode. Yeesh. And of course, you could get my multimedia vlog/podcast Greg Way each and every day. If you were once touched by an angel named Lazlow, I want you to super chat your questions to me. youtube.com
Without you sound and tell me where it hurt.
Yeah. youtube.com/kindoffunnygames to do super chats to be part of the show. Of course, we're a small business, 11 people making all sorts of live talk shows. You've already gotten conjecture on Games Daily about what Blue Point is up to. You can catch that now. YouTube, of course, podcast services. After this, it's going to be the boys playing video games. They said chained together, but I heard them talking about another game out there, so see what they'll be up to. If you're a Kind of Funny member, today's Greg Way is God Bless Luchos. Thank you for making our dreams a reality. Patreon producers Kieran Hovasapian, Carl Jacobs, Fargo Brady, and Delaney Twining. Today we're brought to you by Shady Rays, Harry's, and A Better Paradise. But we'll tell you about that later. For now, let's start with topic of the show. The topic's you. The topic's you, Lazlow. I am honored to have you in my presence. You are here. This is such a big deal. But really, I think, obviously, like I said, I want to talk about everything. I want to talk about Chatterbox. I want to talk GTA. But for now, talk to me about Absurd Ventures, because this is the new thing. Of course, you, Dan Houser, breaking off on your own, going on. You know, I left a very successful place to start my own thing too. So if you need advice, let me know. But what is Absurd Ventures?
Well, so when you left IGN, was there a period in between where you just sort of sat in a forest and cried, or?
No, we didn't have time for that. We had to immediately start making this, or it was out of business.
Fantastic. Yeah, so I left Rockstar in 2020, right before the pandemic. Spent a bunch of the pandemic with a nail gun in my hand.
What were you building? Hopefully.
I was just sitting in the dark with a nail gun in my hand, drinking whiskey, shooting at rodents. And then Dan reached out to me and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about starting this new thing." And he told me some of his ideas for different universes that he wanted to make. One of them is A Better Paradise, which is set in the future. And, so many of the projects that we worked on were set in the 80s, 90s, current day, 1899 with Red Dead, and 1907 with the Red Dead before that. And so to do something in the future that's sci-fi was extremely compelling. And, Dan and I were writing partners for 19 years at Rockstar, and
outrageous.
We have a great vibe. It's sort of London meets Oklahoma. So we started Absurd Ventures and got a great team. We're in Santa Monica. I was in New York for 25 years, and the food in California is way better. Like
Come on, Lazlow, speak the truth. Let him know. Take him to church.
The avocado fentanyl toast is amazing. It's top notch.
So you branch off, you come here, you start this thing up. What I thought was so impressive but ambitious, right? Because we've seen so many people screw this up, is the idea that when you start Absurd Ventures, you talk very much about this is going to be for, I have the quote in front of me from the press release, right? For a diverse variety of genres without regard to medium, to be produced for live action and animation, video games, and other interactive content, books, graphic novels, scripted podcasts. That's a lot to bite off.
Yeah, it's a lot. But Dan and I were always making tons of media. For the GTA games, we started just making radio. And then as the hardware got more robust, we said, well, if people are driving around just listening to the radio and not doing the missions, what if we added television so that they could go into their apartment in the game and watch their character watching television? So we started creating all these animated TV shows in the game. There was a spoof internet, there was news, and we love creating all that content and, love making television. All that existed inside the world. And, in the case of Red Dead 2, you had like old timey cartoons that you could watch. So we thought, well, what if we start a company and make games, but also make television and graphic novels and animated shows? And so it's creatively, it's fun because you get to hop back and forth between them. And this project, this universe that we just revealed, A Better Paradise, it's a weird way to go about a franchise, an audio only 12 episode story that's about a fictional game team in the future making an open world game. So, but it forced us to make a lot of creative decisions in a very quick time period because we have to, we're basically deciding the lore of the entire world in 6 months, rather than having in a dev cycle for 5 years. You can make a lot of decisions along the way, change things.
It's impressive, and again, to get to A Better Paradise, right? Which I think is fascinating. We always talk about, when you work. I have this journalism background. I worked at newspapers, right? IGN, the wall between advertising and editorial. It was very funny in our editorial meeting here last week where I was like, and Lazlow's coming on next week on the Gamescast to talk about Absurd Ventures and Better Paradise. And Tim's like, hey, just so you know, A Better Paradise is sponsoring us next week. And I was like, oh, okay, interesting note. So I wanted to call out to our audience because we share everything, obviously, ethically, that's happening, but this isn't part of it. So this isn't advertorial. This is just the fact that PR hit me up and was like, how about this? Because the show's going. And I said, of course. And then that's happening too, which of course is cool then that you're supporting us. But I digress. What I like about A Better Paradise and what I find, again, fascinating, as somebody who listens to so many audio podcasts and narrative podcasts, is how much you allow your main character to monologue. I was listening to episode 1, right? And it was 17 minutes of a monologue before we got to what I think of as the usual fictional Foley stage, footsteps, phone call, people are talking back and forth. Did you look into what was going on in narrative podcasts and say, I don't want to do that? Did you say this is going to be very strictly our own thing? How did you tackle what you wanted to do with A Better Paradise?
No, we didn't look at anything else. We just, and to be honest, some people, and this is with all the projects that Dan and I have worked on.
Sure.
People get outside of their comfort level. They're like, this is not what I'm used to. And we decided from a storytelling standpoint to have two time periods. One is in the 2030s, and you're listening to scenes that are at this fictional video game company. And then there's monologues in the 2040s with people who are on the run, possibly being manipulated and pursued by AI. And we thought it was just an interesting way to tell a story, and also there's several characters that do monologues. So it's interesting to get inside their heads. And it's also a quick way to give backstory about what's happening in the world.
Yeah, and it makes, the characters seem completely unhinged as when they're going and they're talking about AI, and are they watching me now, and is this right? See, so I think about where I want to go, but I go to the opposite place of that, so they won't, and I'm like, Jesus, man, this is Diary of a Madman on the Wall.
Yeah, and it's that there's a lot of paranoia in it, and trying to figure out, you start to piece together some things over the course of the series. But one of the things that I love, the AI character of Nigel Dave, is there's been so many shows and movies about evil AI, and we thought, well, these things are making us completely neurotic, right?
Yeah, our phones are doing it. Yes.
So if an AI was inside a video game building a world and then escaped and was reading the internet every fraction of a second, it would be as neurotic as we are. So, and if you listen to episode 1, there's a long monologue from the AI character who's rapidly reading the internet and trying to make sense of humans and how insanely confused and miserable we are. And the other thing about, doing something in sci-fi, we'd never done sci-fi before, but frankly, these franchises where there's flying cars and jetpacks and all that. I mean, we're living sci-fi now, and we imagine in 15 years from now, things are going to be even crazier and worse. Right.
Yeah, sadly,
it's not gonna be flying cars. It's gonna be what we've got now: death or delivery by drone. You can get a hamburger or you get a missile shot into your face. So
maybe it's a 2-for-1. You never know.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that it's always funny. I think at least for me, and it sounds like for you too, definitely that optimistic look to the future. Flying cars. This will be so much better. Be able to hydrate the pizza like in Back to the Future 2. That's long gone. Right now, it is just going to be like the phone will keep getting smaller until it's inside me, and that's the best I can look for.
And one of the big things that we did in the Red Dead and GTA universes was advertising. We would create a radio commercial. I mean, we're essentially like, I've called it demented ad agency. We would make a radio commercial. There'd be a TV commercial that you could see. There'd be billboards on the side of the road. And so advertising to us is the great manipulator, right? All of the TikTok, Instagram, all the algorithms, YouTube are meant to make you miserable, right? And to keep
Here's
watching
all the things you're missing. Here's all the things you should buy and spend your money on. Stay here.
Right. If you buy these things, you'll be less miserable. And in A Better Paradise, they talk about how when you see advertising in the future, every one of those ads is specifically made by AI based on your algorithms, right? So everybody sees a different commercial, gets a different message, and is constantly being manipulated. I mean, it happens now. I can have a conversation with someone in another room, not even near my phone, and then I open up Instagram, and there's an ad for the thing I was just talking about.
Oh, yeah. It's scary.
It's exciting. It's exciting and terrifying.
The two different choices we made there. Yeah. But I think what's fascinating then for me with you guys as somebody who has been, lucky enough to follow the lineage in GTA and Rockstar and talk to Mr. Hauser and interview him. I remember when GTA 5 had shipped and there was this conversation somewhere about like, well, what's next? And it was one of these where I remember someone, I think it was Dan, saying, where we're at already is a parody. Like, how could we parody a parody of a parody? You know what I mean? Like, what do we do? And I love that with this project, you're able to do something. And like you said, even though it's a new ballgame for you to have 6 months to do everything and make your lore and get it out there, there is this nimbleness to it, right? Where it feels like you're publishing so much quicker than you were before these ideas. Is that accurate from my outsider perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think One of the struggles that we always had from a technology standpoint or a satire standpoint is with long game development cycles, it's hard to make evergreen content, especially you've got these worlds that you're trying to make a hyper, more insane version of, but then over the course of development, the world gets even crazier, right? And
Yeah.
so how do you make that evergreen content? I mean, I remember in GTA 3 we had a commercial for the Dormatron where you can, lose weight while you sleep. And then a year and a half after the game comes out, I hear a commercial for a product that lets you lose weight in your sleep, and I was like, wow. And there's been a bunch of times that Dan and I have done spoofs that actually become
hit way
reality.
Too close. That hit way too close. Again, Chatterbox, I listened to some of it, you know what I mean, before this, just to, refresh my memory. But it's like that idea of like what seemed so absurd there are people who not only are on the radio anymore, they have their own TV shows on network. You know what I mean? They're out there doing the most ridiculous thing. It's like, that's insane.
Yeah, and I'd worked at radio for several years before that, and always found talk radio super fascinating. And the thing about working at a radio station that you quickly realize is the people that call in are not your fans. They're maniacs. And I say this as a person who was stalked by one of the listeners of the rock radio station that I worked at. And so folks that actually take the time to, call a radio station and call into a show, a lot of times are completely batshit. So
For sure.
Dan and I were having our weekly writing meeting and thought it would be fun to just have all these callers that are completely unhinged and are referencing stuff you haven't even really heard. Like a caller would call in and is like, hey, you guys were talking about chocolate donuts. Like, no, we weren't.
For me, the one that stuck with me all of these years, and there's lots of bits or whatever, but it was always the woman who was calling in about video games, and she's like, the dog got run over, and she said, "Mommy, where's the reset button?" I'm like, oh, that's all. Mommy, where's the reset button? Has always hung in my brain about that. But since we're transitioning back to, and it's so hard to tell your story without all of it. How does that happen? How do you go from being in radio, and even though you were in radio and still are long after, but in radio to then making a radio station for Grand Theft Auto 3?
What was the origin story?
Yeah, how did that all come to be?
I was on a side quest in life. No, I lived in Long Beach, New York, a couple of blocks from the ocean, and I was literally surfing and met another guy in the ocean who I'd seen there before, and the waves were fantastic, and I was complaining about having to go to LA because I'd looked at the surf report and the waves were garbage. And he's like, oh, yeah, I'm going to LA too. And I said, what are you going to LA for? He's like, oh, I'm going to E3. I said, I'm going to E3 as well. And he said, yeah, we just started a video game company recently. And I said, well, I do a nationally syndicated radio thing about technology and I review video games and all that. And he's like, oh, you should come do a piece on us. All right. Yeah. So got his info, came into the office, met Dan Houser, and he said, hey, we have this idea about making fun of American radio. And
you're like, I got ideas.
And I said, I've here, you should do this, you should do that. And he said, do you want to work with us on it? I was like, wow. And, as a kid growing up with gaming machines and gaming computers, the TRS-80,
yeah,
and various, old PCs, 286, 386, 486, all that. And
as an aside, is this, you made a reference earlier, is this in Oklahoma? Is that where you grew up?
Yes, this was in Oklahoma. So we had a computer in our house in the late 70s.
Okay.
And
shout out to mom and dad. That's great.
Dialing into a server in Kansas, with and it was basically just a big typewriter. And so every time you typed in a command prompt, the electric typewriter would display it on paper, and then the server would send back stuff, and then it would type. And I would program games and play tons of games off a cassette, and then the idea of actually getting to work on a game was like a dream come true. And then So a month after GTA 3 comes out, Dan calls me and says, "Hey, we're starting work on the next game." And I go, "What are you talking about? We just finished that one. Like, why don't we just chill and take a break?" And he said, "No, we're doing another one, and we want it to be twice as big.
No big deal.
Twice the map, twice as much radio content." And that was Vice City. And then we rolled from that into San Andreas. And then I said, this is a lot more fun than radio. So why don't I just come work here full time?
That's awesome. And they said yes, and there you were. And so how does that evolve though, right? Because I obviously have done my research, but for the audience, you go from, working on the radio stuff, making that happen, but then as time goes on, you go well beyond the radio in terms of what you're doing for the Grand Theft Auto series and Red Dead.
Yeah, I was working on the trailers, overseeing all the audio recording. One of the things that I'm really proud of is the level of authenticity that we would go for. So if you need specific accents or languages, we would travel to those places. For instance, in Red Dead 2, we went to Santa Fe, New Mexico so that we could record indigenous Americans. We flew to New Orleans and recorded tons of, Creole individuals, because those accents you just can't get right with New York or LA actors. You want to record the real people. And I mean, even going back to San Andreas, we always had that ethic of the game, rather the gang members in the game. Those were real gang members that they recruited and to come do voiceover. And we brought them in the studio and we'd show them the scripts and they're like, "Jan, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that. I'd say this." And we're like, "Well, say what you would say." And
we're burning tape. Just go.
Right. So, I loved that level of authenticity, and then got involved with a lot of the motion capture. So in Red Dead 2, when you go to the campfire and people are telling stories or singing songs, I wrote a lot of that dialogue, and I wrote the songs, and I directed all the talent. While people are getting drunk and singing body songs. So yeah, the role expanded. It was a blast. And, those games I'm super proud of and got to work with some incredible people.
Is there a moment, it's interesting, especially for you being a fan, like all of us, then moving to doing the radio show covering video games, then being involved in it, then going all the way through the Looking Glass, right, and being way more on that side. Is there a moment with GTA 3, Vice City, San Andreas, or beyond where you realize, is there like a night and day black and white, like, oh wow, this is the biggest thing on earth right now?
I think the turning point, it was exciting to be part of those groundbreaking earlier games, but I think the turning point was GTA 4, when the new hardware allowed us to do something that looked a lot more cinematic. It was less cartoony. And the press, you'll probably remember this, but the press changed around 2008, because all the press before that was video games are corrupting humanity. They're the worst things in the entire world. There was movements to ban the games and not let stores sell them. And then in 2008, when we released GTA 4, the press started saying, "Wow, this might actually be art." And I would have those moments where I'd be at the airport, and I would have something in my carry-on luggage, and the TSA guy would be like, you can't bring that on board. That could be used as a weapon." And then he's like, "Hey, where'd you get that shirt? Where'd you get that GTA shirt?" I was like, "Oh, I worked on the game." And he was like, he said to the other guys, like, "Oh man, he worked on Grand Theft Auto." He goes, "Yeah, just go on through." Like, oh, fantastic.
You're the one who just gets to chase it. You know what I mean? Like, as long as you have this shirt, you can do whatever you want out there. That's amazing. What about obviously the name GTA and the press and all that jazz? What about you? Because again, I can't imagine when you're doing the GTA 3 Chatterbox stuff, you have any concept of how much that is going to hit for people and how much that's going to mean to people, let alone now to be 20 some years removed from it, right? And have it still be quotable and have people still be, even as soon as I announced it, the chat was popping off, my Twitter mentions, everything about it is like, oh my God. And even it's crazy to me, because you're so GTA 3, so Chatterbox, that in the meeting out there when I mentioned it and then I started going through the other radio stations, I forget at which one Mike Howard, his eyes lit up because that's when he pieced it together who you were. Like, what about you as Lazlow becoming something greater than just a man?
Well, that was, I don't know, we didn't have a lot of conversation in those writing meetings when we were writing Chatterbox. We said, who should be the host? And Dan said, why don't you be the host? And I'm like, okay, what am I named? He's like, just be Lazlow. And I'm like, okay. And so over the years, as I, appeared in multiple games as myself, Dan would sabotage me. Like, he'd send his version of a script over and I would look through it. And I was like, really? You really want me to say this? You really want me to sound this pathetic? And same when he sent me the first pass of the script for the mocap scenes in GTA 5. I'm like, really? Dancing in my underwear? He's like, it's going to be great. Like,
I'm going to make you a star, Laz. That's amazing. I think what's so cool about it is like what you're talking about. And again, what the Rockstar name meant and what Grand Theft Auto carried, and how importantly how that press changed everything, right? I got my start writing a newspaper right after college, and I'd always thought I'd go right to EGM, I'd go right to GamePro, I'd go right to IGN, and I didn't. And I worked there a year before I finally convinced them to let me do a video game column weekly in a video game blog. And I did an article called Like a Bad Wedgie, Bully game critics are too tight. And it was talking about how people were ragging on it. And this is from February 2007. I know because I kept an email from Harry Allen from Rockstar Games, who I don't know and never met, but emailed me, found it, and just wrote, "Dear Greg Miller, beautifully pointed and stated, thank you." And it was one of those things of like, that's an email I've held on to since 2007, right? Because it was for me, not only the first real contact with the outside. Like, I think I had contacts at Capcom. I was getting a game here or there, begging EA to send me an NCAA game, right? But to have someone in the industry, let alone the people who make GTA, make Bully, talking to me about what I wrote about it, like, that was such a huge touchstone in the same way it was for you to walk through TSA that one day.
Yeah, and I was in London doing press for A Better Paradise and met a guy, and I said, I'm Lazlow, and he's like, "Oh, you're Lazlow from Chatterbox," and starts quoting the caller who was talking about eating squirrels and possums, and he's like, "Where'd you get the idea for that?" I was like, "That's my father." I called him up. We did not eat squirrel and possum as children. We ate frog legs,
of course, delicious.
Of course, as you do.
Yeah.
And if you can murder it outside, throw it on the grill. But it's amazing how the comedy that Dan and I wrote for those games, even going through GTA 5, those people will quote their favorite lines from it.
Which has got to be so, I don't even know, right? I was going to say touching, but I also imagine it goes beyond that to being unbelievable, of like a game where there are so many moving pieces, and GTA 3 or all the way up to GTA 5, right? In terms of voiceover, in terms of performance, in terms of what the character is doing in the scene versus what the player wants them to do versus, if you're talking about GTA 5, moving between three characters, this very much LA recreation that there's so many people like, oh, that's where E3 was, or this is that, blah, blah. Like, to be, I imagine what you would to think of at some point a small part of that, but have it resonate so much with people, man. That's your legacy. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was exciting. And the team grew. It was a scrappy startup, really. Yeah. And, you could pivot creatively quite easily. And, Dan would come into my office and say, "I have a great idea for da-da-da." And we would knock a script out, and a week later I'm recording it, with an actor. And that, that moving fast like that is super fun. And also just and I think one of the things I'm excited about with Absurd Ventures is moving quick with a smaller team, mm-hmm. and doing all these different kinds of projects. For a Better Paradise universe, it's to do when Dan said I want to do like an audio book that's acted out with a sound designer and composer, and we actually hire actors to do all these scenes. I had no concept of how much work it was going to be. We love audio, and that's how Dan and I started, is making interesting audio for people to listen to. And that's what I love about like the Nigel Dave character in this series, is like he's funny. His monologues are hysterical, and people around the office quote them.
That's a great sign if it's in the office. The people who are making the thing are quoting it. Well, here, I'm going to give you this one to stew on, and then I'm going to kick it over to ads, and then
All
we'll
right,
come
I'm
back
ready
with
to
the answer.
stew. I'm stew ready.
You talk about, stew ready for the pot. You talk about GTA 3, you talk about being a ragtag bunch, and then obviously Rockstar becomes this phenomenon. GTA becomes this whole thing. I want to dig into that a little bit about then going to Absurd, starting this thing, and having it be back to that. What you feel like you lost from GTA 3 as the company got bigger and you lost that ability to pivot, versus what you have now, which is obviously far less bandwidth, right? But the ability to do whatever you want. But before that, I'll remind everybody that Kinda Funny can only do what they want, because we broke away from a big thing and started our own small thing that's now a medium-sized thing because of your support. If you could go pick up the Kinda Funny membership on patreon.com/kindafunny or youtube.com/kindafunny, that'd be great. You get each and every episode of the more than 20 shows we do a week ad-free. You'd get the ability to watch us record the afternoon podcast live as we record it. And of course, you'd get my daily Greg Way video/podcast series. Plus, you get good karma because you're supporting an 11-person small business. But you're not using your Kinda Funny membership benefits right now. So here's a word from our sponsor.
This episode is brought to you by Shady Rays. Get ready for the season ahead with quality shades built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company that offers an unrivaled product that's just as good as any expensive pair we've worn. Durable frames and world-class optics for all outdoor adventures. With an extensive array of styles and colors, you're bound to find the perfect pair of Shady Rays sunglasses. Y'all know I've been outside in the sun a lot playing Pokemon Go, and it's such a great experience wearing Shady Rays when I am out and about looking dope. Every pair of sunglasses is backed by lost or broken replacements. If you lose or break your pair, even on day one, they told us they will send you a brand new pair, no questions asked. Exclusively for you, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com and use code KF20 for $20 off each pair of polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. This episode is brought to you by Harry's. I always hate when I buy something and then I talk to someone else and I realize I way overspent and they got it for cheaper. It's happened to all of us, but getting ripped off is no joke, especially when there's razors involved. The people at Harry's were tired of seeing everyday people paying way too much for low quality shaving products. So they found a way to make beautifully designed razors without laughably high prices. You can get better designed and better value grooming products made by a company that forged their own path in the grooming industry. Harry's has been keeping me looking right for years, and you already know I'm going to count on them for a high quality shave for my wedding. Highest customer satisfaction in the shaving industry. No risk trial. You don't like your shave? No worries. It's on them. Convenient subscription options that allow you to cancel at any time, and you can stop getting ripped off. With Harry's, you can get a shave that's a cut above the rest. Get started with a $13 trial set for just $3 at harrys.com/kindafunny. That's harrys.com/kindafunny for a $3 trial set.
This episode is brought to you by A Better Paradise. From the writers of the Red Dead Redemption and Grand Theft Auto series comes the new immersive audio fiction podcast, A Better Paradise, Volume 1 and Aftermath. Set in the near future, A Better Paradise tells the story of the ill-fated development of an ambitious but addictive digital game world project led by inventor and psychologist Dr. Mark Tyburn. As the advanced software they developed began to deliver unexpected and disturbing results, the team fell apart under strange circumstances, and the project was abandoned. The game world and the super intelligence within were discarded, left dormant, and undiscovered. Until now. I listened to episode 1 on my way to work today, and the thing that stood out, of course, are the performances, but then as an audio drama fan, it was the use of monologues. There's a whole bunch of talking here as it sets up the world that is not that far from us in the timeline and also not that far from us in the technology, which is disturbing, but I'm quite interested to see where it goes. A Better Paradise is out now and available everywhere you get your podcasts. Go listen today, and don't forget to follow A Better Paradise on your platform of choice to make sure you never miss an episode. And don't ever talk to me that way again. We're back. Hey, everybody. We're back. Thank you so much. Remember, of course, get your super chats in on youtube.com/kindafunnygames to be part of the conversation with Lazlow as we now double back. So yeah, basically, do you feel like, you leave Rockstar before GTA 6, after the success of GTA 5 in 2020? Why that decision? Had it gotten too big? Had it lost what you liked about the GTA 3 thing? Or am I just reading too much into it? And then
No, I mean, all of those games were a unique challenge, and Red Dead 2 is super proud of. We filled that world and made it alive. And after that came out, and I was working on GTA Online and Red Dead Online, and then here we go, bummer alert, my sister came down with cancer, so I started. Interesting creative exercise. Writing comedy from a chemo ward is
the funniest place on earth.
Funniest place on earth. And
is she okay?
So,
Is your sister okay?
No, she's dead.
I apologize.
So, so I spent a bunch of time taking care of her, and then that kind of opened my eyes to how long you're on the planet, and so I left, and then I was so excited because I thought, okay, I'm starting a new chapter. I did 19 years at Rockstar. I did a bunch of years as a syndicated radio guy. And then I fly out to LA, and I've got a bunch of meetings in the first week of March 2020. And then all of a sudden, all the meetings are getting canceled. And then I get a notification from Delta that I've been upgraded to first class. And I was like, something's not right.
Something's amiss.
Something's amiss. So yeah, and then spent the pandemic doing home improvement and washing Amazon boxes and living in fear.
But then you snapped out of it. You came to Absurd Ventures.
Exactly.
So then what is it like then to be back here? Because again, Rockstar, GTA, that's the top of the mountain, right? You can do whatever you want. There's unlimited money, et cetera, so on. You recontextualize life and what it all means. Go have your little walk with your nail gun. Then you come back to this now, and again, I'm sure you guys are doing fine financially, but a smaller team, I assume. You're trying to do all these bigger projects. It's a weird one because you start this new business, but it's you guys. You got Dan Houser, you got you. It's okay, but they're doing a podcast, but Andrew Lincoln is on the podcast. It's there's a lot of things going on here that it's not like your traditional indie sphere, but I got to imagine it feels bootstraps again.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's starting anything new is terrifying. But I love the creative partnership with Dan. We've had some of the other folks that we worked with have joined us. Mike Unsworth, Adam Tedman, long time veterans. And mostly I'm just excited about making new IP, making new universes, and, worked on GTA for a long time, worked on Red Dead, and to be starting these universes from complete scratch is terrifying, but also super exciting.
Do you feel like this is your chance to learn from previous mistakes? You're talking about from scratch, right? You can do whatever you want. And obviously at one point that was the same way with GTA, whereas then, 5 games in, 6 games in, it's going to be X, Y, and Z. Are you looking at this one let's not paint ourselves into a corner with this IP that way?
Well, that's one of the things that I really was nervous about with A Better Paradise, is because while directing Andrew Lincoln and all these other folks, and frankly working with the sound designer to, there's scenes where they're playing the game, or there's scenes where people are exploring the game world, all of that has got to have continuity through all the other projects, whether it's television show, a game. So I stayed up at night trying to figure out how does this thing sound, what's the lore, and what everything we mentioned in this show has got to carry on through the other projects and have continuity. And it's great to start with a universe from scratch, because when you have a legacy IP, right, you've got a lot of legacy lore, right, of what's happened and brands and characters and all that. But we got to start that from complete scratch, and also do what I think we do well, satire. And, we've done satire of 1899 and the 80s and, modern day Los Angeles and all that. It's like, well, let's do, what does the world look like and how can we make fun of it in the future?
I have two things to pull from that one, but I'll start with, you talk about A Better Paradise, you talk about the podcast, but you talk about it being one part of this new world, this new IP. Is everything Absurd Ventures is starting being put through that, well, it can be all of these things, or is this a specific one where A Better Paradise we see as being part of this universe that we're building, that we want to be these things, but this other thing we're noodling is just going to be a book, graphic novel, whatever, video game?
All the universes that we're working on have plans or pre-production for other media.
Okay.
So, and they're all completely separate universes. The other one that we announced is American Caper, which we're going to be releasing some stuff hopefully later this year for people to check out. And then there's a third universe that we haven't even announced that we've been working on for 2.5 years.
Very cool.
I was working on a script for that this morning where I got to use the phrase christening the yak.
Oh,
so
I like that. I like where that one's going, Lazlow. I like where that is. How big is Absurd Ventures right now in terms of people? Because this is a lot of stuff to be tackling at once.
Yeah, well, I can tell you it's getting bigger every day because we've run out of parking spots.
Okay, that's good.
Which is a bit of a thing in Los Angeles.
Sure.
So yeah, we've been hiring and recruiting, and when we announced what was super exciting is tons of people reached out and said, I would love to work with you guys. And even we always had that over the years. People love the work that we've done and the team at Rockstar did. So when you would reach out to people and say, hey, we're kind of thinking about you for this character, they're like, I'm totally in, I love your stuff. And that's a great way to start the conversation. I mean, Patterson Joseph, who plays Nigel Dave, the neurotic AI character, when we reached out to him, he was like, I loved Red Dead 2. I will do anything you guys want me to. And in the early days of Rockstar, that was hard when you said, hey, we'd like you to be in this video game. And they're like, isn't that the one you can run around and shoot a bunch of people?
Isn't that the one you kill the hookers in? The one thing people broke out. Even though I bet Ray Liotta was probably like, that sounds cool. I want to go be a part of that.
There was, so one of my friends played a prostitute in GTA, or maybe it was Vice City. And she was at Christmas, and her nephew was playing the game. And she said, oh, I'm in this game, and the whole family was there. It's like, oh, go find her character. Went and found the character, and things ensued, and said it was a very awkward holiday moment.
What was it like? You mentioned it before, but what was it like when the GTA 4 turn happened and suddenly it wasn't that this was like something ruining the minds of the young people, but it was actually something that should be celebrated and looked into, and the satire was elevated, right? And what the writing was and what the story was.
Yeah, and a lot of people, like, when I mentioned earlier that people were reacting to this format and saying this is not what I'm used to, a lot of people did the same thing with GTA 4. It was a bit more serious. The graphics were way different than what people were used to with San Andreas and Vice City, and that ushered us into a new era. But I was mostly excited about more disk space because that meant that we could put, in-game TV shows. Dan and I love making cartoons and came up with Republican Space Rangers and Princess Robot Bubblegum and Kung Fu Rainbow Laser Force and all of those. And to have that, it gave you the flexibility of making the world feel more real. And then in GTA 5, we said, well, you should be able to watch stuff on your phone in the game, so you can actually watch animated shows or disappear into a fake Instagram or a fake Twitter. And as the games and the hardware advanced, then it's amazing to me when we would like release a trailer for Red Dead 2 and someone who doesn't play games, would watch it and there's like, this looks like a movie.
Yeah.
And it got to that level of production quality. And, I think we had over 500,000 lines of dialogue in Red Dead 2. It was we were a writing and recording and production machine. And, we've still got that ethic here, of like, let's make a ton of stuff because we love, Dan and I have talked about it when we were launching this chapter of Absurd Ventures. Like, well, I don't want to just go, fish for the rest of my life or work at a gas station or something and take it easy. Like, we have to be making stuff or we'll go insane.
Sure. Do you ever feel like you bit off more than you can chew, though? You're talking about these three
every day. But that's the, whenever Dan would come to me with an idea, to have this idea, and I've got these characters, my gut reaction was always, that's insane. That's nuts. And I don't know how we're going to do that, or I think that idea is crazy. And then as it progressed, I was like, oh, this actually makes sense. And, with any of those projects, as long as you chop everything into small pieces and just knock it out day by day, those small pieces, you can make something huge and amazing.
For sure. I think as we start to wind down here, the one question I was thinking of as we've gone through this and you talk so much about him is, what is Dan like as a writing partner, as a creative partner on this? You guys have been doing it together so long. Is every conversation, whether you're just going to the taco truck, about like, well, what about this and what about that? Da, 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 da.
Well, it's the same as our first writing meetings about Chatterbox. We just sit and talk about our life, weird experiences, people that we've met, something weird in the news, and we start making jokes. And, we'll be walking to pick up lunch or something, and we're just having a conversation, and a few funny lines come out of it, and I pull my phone out and, write them down. And a lot of the writing meetings are Dan's on the couch and, laying down on the couch, staring at the ceiling. I'm in front of a laptop and we're just riffing, and I'm taking notes as fast as possible. And then I send those notes to him and we divide up who's going to write what scripts, who's going to take the first pass.
Interesting.
And so, like yesterday, he sent me a page and a half from one of the scripts that he'd started, and I add another page and a half and edit his stuff and send it back. And then we just, go back and forth until we go, okay, this is funny. And then we'll get together and do a live read of it. So I'll play one character, he plays another, read it out loud, and we'll, punch it up, or we'll be like, that joke stinks, or that's going to offend Greg, whatever.
Don't offend me.
So it's basically the same process, except the first writing meetings for GTA 3, Vice City, San Andreas, those were with, a 12-pack of Diet Coke and anchovy and onion pizza and packs of cigarettes. And so now it's like, quinoa and seltzer.
What's it been like right now as, we start to prep for GTA 6 and we had that first trailer? Yeah. What's it like to be on the outside looking in on it?
It's weird, but, I have so many friends that I worked with over the years, people that I hired or that joined the production team, and I'm excited for them,
for sure,
because I know It's a ton of hard work, and there hasn't been a GTA since GTA 5 in 2013. So, I know that my friends that I still talk to there are super, super excited.
Yeah, I think the world is pretty clearly, so that's exciting. Lazlow, my final question. Actually, I have two final questions. First one final question for you is, I think, broader. Of you've been doing this so long, you've been writing comedy inside of these games for so long. Why do you think other games struggle with being funny? I think that for a long time there was a belief video games couldn't be funny and this, that, the other. And then I think, you saw it through Chatterbox, but then in general, the satire of GTA and how it's all evolved. And there's been many successes now, but I still feel comedy is something that, in terms of, I can go find a horror game or an action game or this, you don't see that many comedy games or games that are really tackling satire like you guys do.
Well, yeah, and I think it helps that each of those games was meant to satirize a specific location and time. I think there's a lot of games where comedy wouldn't make a ton of sense in them. But also, we always wanted to fill the world with as much stuff for people to be distracted by. And you sort of forget that I'm supposed to be doing a mission. I ended up in the casino for an hour. And, all of that content, tons of Easter eggs. We love when we'll see on YouTube somebody found an Easter egg from Red Dead 2 that, just discovered something that we put in there.
Sure.
We put a ton of Easter eggs in A Better Paradise. And even the video that we released when we announced the company, I don't know if you
the 2-minute thing, you literally, it was absurd, right? Of this, the flash,
Right.
the guy looking at the thing, yeah.
But that's full of Easter eggs. And so those will become more apparent. And, burying that stuff, we did it frankly, with GTA 3, people talk about, there's a guy calling in and I say, no, this isn't Gardening with Maurice. Right, that's another show. And then in Vice City, we did a show called Gardening with Maurice.
Yeah.
So we love to build huge worlds and tell stories in them, and that's what the idea was with A Better Paradise. This is the first story, and people can pick it apart and figure out about the game world that they're creating and the madness of AI and the future where there's no solar panels anymore.
Damn. Final question then, Lazlow, is very simple. How long until we see a game from you guys?
Oh, that's a good question. I hope soon.
Okay.
I hope soon.
So you're working on
we've
one.
got
You going?
we're working on a lot of
couple
we're
going?
working on a lot of stuff.
Okay.
A lot of stuff.
All right. Fine. Well, right now, of course, you are working on A Better Paradise. It is getting a new episode each and every Monday. 3 episodes are up right now. Like I said, starring Andrew Lincoln. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's going to be a 12-episode run.
It is 12 episodes. In fact, I'm in a Sony Dolby Atmos studio tomorrow, mixing episode 11.
Oh wow!
So we're mixing all of them in Atmos, which is like 18 speakers surrounding you in madness, which was again a creative challenge because I had to block out all the scenes and all this. Andrew Lincoln walks by on your right side and gets an argument with people over here. What does the AI entity sound like? And what does the internet sound like? What does the void of the Internet of Things sound like? And so I've had some people say, wow, I really dig the spatial audio that you guys have done. And it's, I've mixed a lot of surround sound and stereo projects over the years, but mixing in Dolby Atmos is a whole other level. You got speakers above your head, helicopters. It's bananas.
Yeah, I know. Tim's obsessed with it. I have to hear about it all the time. He's just this sound. He's got the cinema room, and then we got to go see the movie in the Dolby Theater. It's a whole thing. That's why I don't want to know. Just keep
Right.
giving me the shoddy AirPods and I'll be fine. That's what I'll just do
Yeah,
that.
it's like when somebody says, "Oh, I got to show you some pictures of my phone from something that happened this week." I was like, "No, you don't. No, you don't." And also, they never find them fast enough.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, "Oh, let me scroll." Then they've got other photos that they want to show you.
Yeah. No, it's
Enough already.
Nobody wants that experience at all. I asked my final question. The final question comes from the Uncharted Wolf, who super chatted on YouTube and said, "Massive fan of you, Lazlow. You're a legend to me. I need to know, what do you think is the canon ending to GTA 4?
The canon ending.
Who did you save?"
Oh, you mean in 5?
No, 4, right? Where Nico has to make his choice.
Well, I mean, I played through it every which way.
The answer is Roman. You save Roman, all right? Save your cousin.
I love Roman.
Who didn't? You know what I mean? Don't fall for love. Fall for family. Go save Roman, everybody. I'm offended you even asked this question, Uncharted Wolf. The answer is pretty simple. Lazlow, thank you so much. A Better Paradise, like I said, you got 3 episodes up right now, a new one every Monday, and many more to come, and apparently a lot more from Absurd Ventures. Congratulations on starting a new thing and getting out there, Lazlow.
Thank you. Yeah, it's wherever you get your podcast, there are episodes available now. I hope people like what we've done. It's kind of weird.
It is very weird, and that's why I like it. So I think you will too, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, I hope you've liked this episode of the Kinda Funny Gamescast. Remember, each and every weekday, we come to you with live talk shows all day long on Kinda Funny. You get Games Daily at 10 o'clock. You can get the Gamescast at 11. And then when that wraps up, you get some video game streaming. Of course, you can catch up on youtube.com/kindafunnygames and podcast services around the globe. If you're watching live right now, Twitch doesn't have to go anywhere. YouTube will get a new link to go see the Jabroni boys play some video games. Maybe chained together, and then maybe something else. They are doing Valorant now. Breaking news, everybody! They're doing Valorant on console.
Yes, they're
doing the Valorant console thing, Lazlow. I'll get you off. You can turn it on right away. You can watch and play this game, Lazlow.
I'm in.
You can't.
I'm in.
Lazlow, thank you.
Yeah. After hearing you talk about how you're covered in perfume from some weird thing that happened to you this morning.
I appreciate you watching Games Daily. Again, I hugged a man's wife. He owns a restaurant. She helps run it. Don't make it weird.
Does Jen know you hugged this man's wife?
I hope she watched the show. Otherwise, we got a problem in our marriage, Barrett. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, it's been our pleasure to serve you.